I worked as an engineer, a problem solver by profession and an unwavering believer in the goodness of people. I was married to Carter Rhodes, a man whose loyalty never wavered, making it easy to trust in forever. I didn't consider myself naive, or at least I hadn't thought so. I just truly believed that with time, patience, and understanding, people with kind hearts would always choose love. That's why I never hesitated when it came to trusting the woman who had become the center of my universe. For 3 years, Ivy and I lived what I believed was a near-perfect life. We owned a snug little townhouse with a modest garden out back. Our mornings began with coffee sipped from mismatched mugs, and though she rarely tended to the flowers, it didn't bother me. Sundays were our ritual. We'd sit close, scribbling dreams into old notebooks, the destinations we wanted to visit, the names we imagined for our future children, and visions of growing old together, hand in hand. Ivy was electric, quick-witted, full of laughter, and always wide-eyed with excitement. She had this way of leaning in, pulling people into her orbit with a word or a smile, making you feel like the center of her world. And me. I never doubted that we were in it together. I was the reliable one, the planner, the steady base. She was a whirlwind of ideas, sometimes chaotic, but always on the edge of brilliance. It was a balance that, for a long time, worked flawlessly. Until it didn't. Not long ago, I had just finished ironing out the final bugs in a complex software system for a medical logistics company. It was one of the most challenging projects I'd taken on recently. Somewhere during that blur of code and deadlines, a strange feeling crept in. Something Ivy had said days ago, or maybe hadn't said at all, floated just out of reach in my memory. It was like waking up from a dream you're desperate to return to but can't. I shook it off. Life was hectic. Our schedules were packed. It didn't seem important. Ivy would return home late, drained but still flashing that familiar smile. At the time, it seemed harmless, a small yellow warning flag I didn't pause to examine closely. She used to come home bursting with stories about her job at Sterling Voss. She'd recount hilarious blunders or frustrations with a new intern who couldn't figure out how to operate the copier. Those stories made me feel included in her world, even if mine looked different. No suits, no high-rise buildings. But slowly, those stories dried up. Then came the late nights. First just once a week, then more often. It was subtle at first, like a slow leak. I reasoned with myself. She was ambitious, driven. Sterling Voss was known for its demanding culture. I didn't want to be the obstacle in her path. But the little shifts kept coming, quiet, gentle changes that didn't seem like much on their own. Like snow softly blanketing a roof until the weight of it becomes too much. She stopped making dinner. I found myself eating alone more often than not. She began to sit with her back to me, absorbed in her phone, barely offering a word. The lavender lotion I loved on her skin was replaced by a sharp, unfamiliar cologne. Her face grew blank, emotionless, dimly lit by the flicker of the TV screen. One Friday night, I finally asked her about it. The new fragrance, musky and unfamiliar. My tone was casual, curious, not accusatory. She gave me a weary smile and said, "It's for the merger work at Sterling. Things are crazy right now." I nodded like it made sense. But something inside me didn't buy it. This wasn't just fatigue or a busy season at work. It wasn't about missed pizza nights or delayed weekend plans. This wasn't distance, it was disappearance. Polite, calculated absence. Still, I told myself we were just in a rough patch. Every couple goes through them, right? I even proposed a getaway, just the two of us. No emails, no phones. Time to reconnect. She said, maybe, but we never picked a date. Then one evening, I came home earlier than usual. I wanted to surprise her, cook her favorite dish, light a few candles, bring back a piece of us. Remind myself, of what we had built. The house was unusually silent. I called her name when I stepped inside. Silence answered. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a message. Still at work. Don't wait up. No heart emoji. No apology. Just cold, detached words. That night, sleep never came. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering when Ivy had stopped speaking to me like her partner and started addressing me like just another item on her to-do list. The hours dragged on, and her side of the bed remained untouched, cold, empty, almost symbolic. When she finally came home, she slipped into the bedroom like a shadow and murmured, "Long day." "Sorry." I didn't reply, not because I was angry, but because I didn't know what to say. If I had found the right words, I would have told her that this was the moment it hit me, the brutal, undeniable truth that I had been lying to myself for far too long. What I once mistook for peace was actually the slow decay of something I had thought was unbreakable. The foundation I believed was solid had been shifting, bit by bit, until nothing felt certain anymore. Still, I clung to the illusion. I told myself this was what marriage looked like sometimes, tough seasons that you endured together. But deep down, the reality was colder. I was the only one who hadn't seen the storm gathering, and by the time I realized it, the damage had already been done. What tore at me most was knowing I'd accepted every excuse, every small lie, just to keep believing in us. But I couldn't unsee the truth anymore. I remembered Sterling's hand resting too comfortably on Ivy's shoulder. The cryptic tone in their messages. The silence that stretched between us, growing heavier by the day, an emotional wound we both pretended wasn't there. I wanted to say, "I would have protected you." I needed her to know that all she had to do was let me in, to trust me with her fears. I was trying to shield her. But instead of understanding, she lashed out, defensive, angry, her temper flaring as though I were the problem. She had already made reckless choices, crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed. And when the consequences hit, it was too late. By then, I had already begun to change, into the man who loses everything trying to save someone who never asked to be rescued. That night, when the house fell quiet and Ivy had gone upstairs, I didn't follow. I stayed downstairs, sitting beside the fireplace we hadn't lit since Christmas. In the muted light of the living room, I just sat there, thinking, about the scent of her new perfume, the one that had replaced the lavender I used to breathe in while holding her. About the way she now tucked her phone away too quickly, how her explanations came too fast and meant too little. They weren't excuses. They were warnings. Clues that she had entered survival mode, running on instinct, not honesty. But survival rooted in betrayal always has a cost. At around 11:15 p.m., I stood up, pulled on my coat, and stepped out into the night. The air was sharp and biting, but I barely felt it. I didn't have a plan, only a restless energy urging me forward, telling me I couldn't sit still any longer. I walked for what felt like hours, eventually crossing the city. And then, there it was, Sterling's building. Cold. Towering. All glass and steel. A modern temple to ambition, just like the man himself. The area was quiet, full of luxury cars and empty sidewalks. I parked a good distance away, tucked out of view. And then I waited. At exactly 12:03 a.m., he stepped out. No chauffeur. No entourage. Just Sterling, wearing a sleek coat and leather gloves, every inch of him dripping with confidence. Arrogance, really. He headed toward his Jaguar, keys in hand. That's when I stepped out of the shadows, steady, deliberate. He saw me and stopped, smirking like he'd just been handed a gift. "Well," he said, his voice laced with mockery, "out for a midnight walk? Or is this another one of your emotional breakdowns?" Then, with a sneer, he added, "Look who it is, the dutiful husband." My jaw tightened. I stepped in closer, voice calm but firm. "She told me everything," I said. "The messages. The manipulation. How you cornered her, made her feel like there was no way out." His brow lifted, smug as ever. "I didn't stop. You made sure she believed she had a choice. But I doubt she ever really did. You made sure of that." My fists clenched before I even realized it. And without thinking, without planning, I struck. My fist connected with his jaw, and he stumbled back, slamming against the side of his car. He wasn't expecting that. He looked more stunned than hurt. But it wasn't over. Sterling straightened, fury replacing his smug expression. And then he charged. I surged forward to meet.